Can I save her? The cost of her life was beyond anything he imagined. Marcus had always known that being a paramedic in the middle of a galactic war would be dangerous. He had saved lives on countless battlefields, some alien, some human, but nothing had prepared him for the moment he would face on this strange planet. The assignment came in the dead of night. The message was brief and the details were sketchy: save the princess. No explanation, no context, just a location and a desperate plea for help. When Marcus arrived at the crash site, the first thing that struck him was the silence. The usual sounds of warfare, explosions, gunfire, the buzzing hum of ships overhead, were eerily absent. Instead, there was only the soft, unnatural rustling of trees and the distant thrum of an unseen power. It felt like the calm before the storm. He moved quickly, his boots crunching on the gravel as he approached the wreckage. The ship, a sleek silver vessel, had crashed into the side of a rocky mountain. It had been a direct hit, shattered, burned, and twisted beyond recognition. Yet amidst the wreckage there was a faint, weak cry, a sound that made Marcus' heart race. He followed the sound and found her, the alien princess. Her skin, an ethereal pale blue, shimmered in the dim light. She lay motionless, her blood staining the ground beneath her. Her long, silvery hair was matted with dirt and blood, and her clothes, once regal and immaculate, were torn and burnt. She was barely conscious, her breathing shallow, her eyes flickering with pain. Marcus knelt beside her, his training kicking in. He reached for his medical kit, his hands steady despite the chaos around him. He could feel the weight of the moment settling on him. Saving her wasn't just about medicine. It was about the fate of the galaxy. A princess, especially one from a race as powerful as hers, couldn't die in a place like this. As he began working, he noticed something strange. Her blood, unlike any human blood, was a deep, almost luminous purple. It pulsed as though it had a life of its own, reacting to his touch. He couldn't help but feel that there was something more to this injury than mere damage. There was something unnatural about it. He worked quickly, patching up the worst of the wounds, applying a bioseal to stop the bleeding. But as he worked, he noticed that her injuries didn't make sense. There were burn marks, cuts, and bruises, but there was something deeper, a deep, almost unnatural energy emanating from her body. He couldn't explain it, but it was like her very essence was linked to the life force of the planet itself. Her eyes fluttered open, and she gazed at him with a mixture of fear and confusion. "You're human," she whispered, her voice weak, but there was a strange undertone to it. She didn't seem surprised, just resigned, as though she had expected him. Marcus looked at her, trying to hold her gaze, trying to reassure her, but his words caught in his throat. "Don't worry, I'm here to help." She didn't seem to hear him. Instead, her eyes closed again, and her body seemed to sag further into the ground, as if the weight of the world was pressing down on her. Marcus knew she wasn't going to survive much longer if he didn't get her medical attention fast. But there was something else bothering him, something that gnawed at the back of his mind. The message he'd received didn't mention how important she was. They hadn't told him that the princess was more than just royalty. They hadn't told him that her life could mean the difference between peace and war, life and death for billions. The sounds of movement reached his ears. He looked up, seeing a group of soldiers approaching, humans, judging by their uniforms. They were too late to help. They were too late to do anything except stand there watching him. One of them, a tall officer, stepped forward, his face grim. "Is she alive?" he asked, his voice cold. Marcus nodded, but before he could say anything more, the officer spoke again. "The princess is important. She can't die. We need to take her back to the capital, get her to a safe place." Marcus frowned. There was an edge to his voice that suggested something darker, something he didn't quite understand. "What exactly are you asking me to do? You know how serious her injuries are." "She needs immediate care, and she's not in any condition to move." The officer glanced at the soldiers around him, his eyes narrowing. "The cost of saving her might be beyond anything you can imagine, but it's your job, Marcus. Get her out of here." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What was he missing? What did they know that he did? He looked back at the princess. Her skin seemed to pulse faintly with a strange energy. Her life force was hanging by a thread. It felt like she was already slipping away. "Her life is in your hands," the officer said coldly, as if it were all part of a plan, a task to be completed. "But don't forget, the price of saving her might cost more than you think." Marcus didn't understand what he meant, but the words echoed in his mind. It was as if he were about to make a decision that would change everything, a choice that he couldn't fully comprehend yet. He glanced down at the princess, her breathing shallow but steady. There was no time for questions, only action. But as he lifted her into his arms and began the journey back to the ship, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he had just stepped into a war much bigger than himself. And the cost of saving her life might be something he couldn't escape. Marcus was exhausted. He had been working non-stop since the moment he had taken Lyra into his arms. The journey from the crash site to the medical facility had felt like an eternity. The princess's condition was worsening with each passing moment, and Marcus couldn't help but feel the weight of responsibility crushing him. The medical bay was cold, sterile, and quiet. The soft hum of the machines was the only sound filling the room. Marcus moved quickly, connecting wires and tubes, trying to stabilize Lyra's rapidly fading health. The doctor on duty, a grizzled veteran named Dr. Reese, didn't say much. He just watched Marcus work, his face a mask of concern and suspicion. "She's fading, doctor," Reese said quietly, glancing at the monitor displaying Lyra's vitals. "You have to act fast." Marcus didn't need to be told. He had seen this kind of thing before, injuries that defied explanation, wounds that should have been fatal but weren't. But Lyra's situation was different. There was something strange about her, something more than just her alien nature. Her wounds seemed to pulse, as if her blood was trying to repair itself, but it wasn't enough. The regeneration process was sluggish, and Marcus had no idea why. He looked down at her, studying her pale face. Lyra's eyes fluttered open, her violet irises filled with an almost haunting beauty. For a moment their gazes locked, and Marcus felt a strange pull toward her. It was a connection he couldn't explain, something deeper than mere survival instincts. He shook his head, trying to focus. Now wasn't the time for distractions. "What happened to you?" Marcus whispered under his breath. The words weren't meant to be heard, but Lyra's faint smile suggested she had caught them. "It's not what you think," she murmured weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." Marcus frowned. What did she mean by that? The more he thought about it, the more he realized that this was bigger than just a rescue mission. There were secrets here, secrets Lyra wasn't telling him or perhaps couldn't tell him. Dr. Reese stepped forward, his expression grave. "We need to run more tests. There's something in her blood that doesn't belong." Marcus's mind raced. Something in her blood. What did that mean? He had seen injuries like hers before, but nothing that involved a foreign substance in her body. He was no expert in alien biology, but he knew that whatever it was having a profound effect on her. Lyra's breath quickened as if sensing the growing tension. She reached out with trembling fingers and gripped Marcus's hand. "You need to leave," she gasped. "You don't understand." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure whether it was fear or something else that made him hesitate. "Leave. You need help. I can't just—" "You don't know what they're planning," she interrupted, her voice growing weaker with each word. "You don't know what they'll do to you if you stay." Marcus felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The way she said it, it wasn't just a warning. It was a plea. He didn't know who they were, but he felt the urgency in her words. "I'm not going anywhere," Marcus said firmly. "You're not alone." Lyra's eyes filled with a deep sadness, as if she knew the cost of staying by her side. "If you stay, you'll never be the same. You'll be caught in a war far bigger than anything you can understand. You'll have to choose, and when you do, it will be the hardest decision of your life." Marcus tried to shake off the feeling of dread settling in his chest. He didn't have time for this. He needed to save her. But how? And why was she so sure that her survival would lead to some terrible consequence? Dr. Reese's voice cut through his thoughts. "We've isolated the foreign substance in her blood. It's not just a chemical or a toxin. It's a form of energy, a kind of ancient power that her people have kept secret for centuries." Marcus turned to the doctor, his brow furrowed. "What kind of power?" Dr. Reese shook his head, looking troubled. "That's the problem, we don't know. We've never encountered anything like it before, but we do know that this energy can't be contained. It's not just healing her, it's feeding on her life force." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the stomach. The princess wasn't just being kept alive by some foreign substance. This power, whatever it was draining her. Slowly but surely it was consuming her from the inside out. "We need to stop it," Marcus said, his voice tense. He couldn't lose her, not after everything he had done to save her. "That's the thing," Dr. Reese said, his voice grim. "You can't, not without a cost." Marcus stared at the doctor, his mind spinning. What do you mean? The doctor hesitated before answering, clearly reluctant to share more. There's a way to stabilize her to halt the energy drain, but the procedure requires a sacrifice. A sacrifice? Marcus repeated, his heart sinking. What kind of sacrifice? Dr. Reese glanced at Lyra, who was still struggling to stay conscious. The energy inside her, the power that's been keeping her alive, needs to be fed. It draws from the life force of those around her. You, Marcus, are the only one who can help her, but the cost. It's more than just your time, it could be your life. Marcus felt the room close in around him. Everything had been moving so fast. First the crash, then the rescue, and now this. He had thought he was saving her, but now he understood that saving her might mean losing everything. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Marcus demanded, his voice rising. Why didn't anyone say anything about the price? We didn't know how to say it, Dr. Reese said quietly. We didn't know if you could handle it. Marcus's mind was reeling. He had to make a choice, and it was one he hadn't prepared for. Could he really let this alien power consume him just to save her? Was it even worth it? Lyra's voice interrupted his thoughts, weak but insistent. You have to choose, Marcus. The galaxy's fate is tied to me. If you save me, you'll change everything. But you have to decide if it's worth the cost. Her words echoed in his mind, and for the first time, Marcus felt the true weight of what he was up against. This wasn't just a rescue mission. This was the beginning of something far bigger. He had no idea what was coming next, but he knew that everything would change once he made his decision. And so, the choice loomed before him. Save the princess and face an uncertain future, or let her die and escape the web of political intrigue and danger that was quickly closing in around him. Either way, nothing would ever be the same. Marcus stood in the dimly lit medical bay, staring at the monitor showing Lyra's vitals. The soft beep of her heartbeat was a rhythm that was both reassuring and terrifying. It meant she was alive, but for how long? He looked at her fragile form lying on the operating table, the faint glow of the alien power within her body still pulsing beneath her skin. He had spent hours researching, trying to find any way to stop the mysterious energy that was both keeping her alive and slowly draining her. But everything he found only confirmed his worst fear. There was no easy way out. Dr. Reese had been clear. There was a way to stabilize Lyra, to stop the energy drain, but it required a sacrifice. The power inside her needed a constant source of life force to sustain itself, and Marcus was the only one who could give it. But how could he? How could he willingly give up his life force to save someone he barely knew? A part of him wanted to refuse. He was a paramedic, trained to save lives, not throw his own away. But the other part of him, this part that had become so connected to Lyra, knew that he couldn't just walk away. Not after everything they had been through. He turned to Dr. Reese, who was busy monitoring the systems. The doctor's face was unreadable, but Marcus could see the worry in his eyes. He wasn't just concerned about Lyra anymore. He was concerned about Marcus, too. Do you have any other options? Marcus asked, his voice tight with frustration. Anything that doesn't involve me giving up my life? Dr. Reese shook his head. None. The energy inside her is too powerful. It's ancient, far beyond anything we've encountered before. We've never been able to study it fully, but from what I know, it needs a source. Without it, it will consume her entirely. And if I do this, if I give her my life force, what happens to me? Marcus asked, his throat dry. You'll survive for now, Dr. Reese replied, but the energy will always be there inside you. It won't kill you outright, but it will slowly change you. You'll feel it, a constant drain on your energy. You'll age faster, grow weaker with each passing day. Marcus closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He didn't know if he could handle that. He didn't know if he could bear the idea of slowly losing himself for the sake of someone else. And yet, as he looked at Lyra, her pale face now more serene than it had been before, he knew there was no other choice. He couldn't let her die, not like this. Not when he had the chance to save her. All right, he said, his voice steady but filled with a deep sadness. I'll do it, Dr. Reese nodded solemnly. We'll begin immediately, but you need to understand this will change everything. It's not just her life at stake anymore. The balance of the galaxy could shift depending on what happens. What do you mean by that? Marcus asked, his mind racing. The energy inside her is part of an ancient power that her people have kept hidden for centuries. It's not just a source of life. It's a force that could change the fate of entire civilizations. If it is awakened, it could either unite or destroy entire species. Marcus felt a cold chill spread through him. He had no idea what he was getting into. All he knew was that he had to make a choice. He looked down at Lyra once more. Her body, though weak, seemed peaceful. She was no longer the frightened, injured princess from hours ago. She had accepted her fate, but Marcus wasn't ready to accept the consequences of his own decision. As they prepared for the procedure, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. The power inside Lyra was far too strong, and the price for saving her seemed higher than anything he could imagine. "I won't let you die," Marcus whispered, more to himself than to her. "I don't care what it costs." The procedure began as the technicians worked quickly and efficiently. The sterile hum of the machines filled the air, but Marcus couldn't focus on that. His mind was elsewhere, lost in the thoughts of the impossible choice he had made. The procedure was long and complicated. Every moment felt like an eternity. Marcus felt his heart race as they hooked him up to the same life support systems that Lyra was connected to. The machines hummed around him, monitoring both of their life signs. He glanced at Dr. Reese, who was overseeing the entire process. The doctor's face was pale, his lips tight with worry. He knew that Marcus was about to give everything for a stranger, but was it worth it? Would the sacrifice be enough to save her? Would he regret it later? Marcus couldn't answer that. All he knew was that he had already made his choice. He had already decided to save her. Lyra's body began to respond. The energy inside her seemed to settle, and the deep pulse in her veins began to slow. But Marcus felt the weight of the energy inside him growing heavier. It was like a deep, invisible drain pulling at his life force. His heart raced, and his breath became shallow as the power started to connect with him, feeding off his strength. "Is it working?" Marcus gasped, feeling the first signs of the energy taking hold of him. "Yes," Dr. Reese answered, his voice strained. "It's stabilizing her." But Marcus didn't hear him. He could feel it now, the pull of the ancient power that had once been contained within Lyra. It was feeding on him, changing him. He had never felt anything like it before. It wasn't just the physical strain, it was something deeper, something that seemed to alter the very core of who he was. "I can't hold it much longer," Marcus whispered, his voice cracking as he felt his strength slipping away. "You have to," Dr. Reese urged. "You have no choice. She's depending on you." Marcus's vision blurred, and the room seemed to spin around him. He tried to focus, tried to hold on, but it was like trying to hold onto a rope that was slowly slipping through his fingers. He could feel the energy tearing at him, draining him. And then, as if in response to his desperation, he felt a shift. The power inside him began to stabilize, and Lyra's vitals surged. Her body seemed to absorb the energy, and the drain on Marcus eased. He could still feel it, though, like an invisible weight pressing down on him, but at least now, Lyra was no longer dying. As the procedure ended, Marcus collapsed to his knees, exhausted, drained, but alive. He looked at Lyra, who was now stable, her breathing slow but steady. She was no longer fading. Her eyes opened slowly, and when she saw him, a faint smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "You did it," she whispered. Marcus nodded weakly. "I didn't have a choice." But even as he spoke those words, deep down, he knew that the choice he had made was one he would never be able to undo. The days that followed felt like a blur. Marcus couldn't remember much of the time after the procedure. His body was still weak, his mind foggy. He had been given some rest, but it didn't feel like enough. The energy, the power from Lyra, still pulsed inside him like a constant reminder of the choice he had made. It was both a burden and a lifeline. The room around him seemed to spin. He could feel the power slowly changing him. He had heard Dr. Reese's warnings about the toll the energy would take, but he hadn't understood just how much it would affect him. His body ached, his muscles felt like they were being slowly drained, and even his thoughts seemed sluggish, as though the energy inside him was trying to control him instead of the other way around. Lyra, on the other hand, was improving. She was awake now, sitting in a chair by the window of the medical bay, looking out at the stars. Her once pale skin had regained its color, and the strange glow from her veins had dimmed, but Marcus could still see the remnants of the power inside her. She was healing, but so was he, though neither of them truly knew what this power would do to them in the long run. "Hey," Marcus said softly, walking over to where Lyra sat. His voice felt weak, but he couldn't ignore the urge to talk to her. He needed to make sure she was all right, even if he was struggling with his own state. Lyra turned to look at him, her eyes soft but filled with a quiet strength. "You're still here," she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I thought you might have," given up by now. Marcus sat beside her, wincing as he felt the weight of his own exhaustion. I made a promise. I didn't ask for this, Lyra whispered. I didn't want you to be dragged into this war. My people, my race, have kept this power hidden for so long, and now. Now you're stuck with it too. Marcus studied her, trying to understand the guilt in her voice. He had known from the beginning that there was more to her than just being a princess. The power inside her was ancient, far beyond anything humans could comprehend. But what he hadn't known was that the energy didn't just live inside her. It had been a part of her people's history, their very existence. And now, that history was entwined with his own. You didn't ask for any of this, Marcus said gently, trying to reassure her. But neither did I chose to help you. I made my decision, and I'm not going to back out now. I'm here, we're in this together. Her gaze softened as she looked at him. But I don't know if I can live with this power inside me. It's dangerous. My people have used it for centuries, but it's not a gift. It's a curse. And now you have a part of it too. Marcus didn't know what to say. How could he explain the strange pull he felt toward the energy? He had felt its power from the moment it had been transferred to him, but it wasn't just physical. It was as if the power had embedded itself in his very soul, changing him in ways he couldn't understand. The energy was inside him now, and it was going to stay there. There was no turning back. I don't know what it means for me, Marcus said, his voice quiet. I don't know what it will do to us, but we can't just let it control us. We have to figure this out together. Lyra looked away, her eyes distant. I don't know if I can. I've been running from this power for so long. It's not just a force of nature, it's a weapon. And if my people find out that I've failed to control it, if they find out that you have it too, she trailed off, her voice barely a whisper. What happens then? Marcus asked, his heart pounding. He had a sinking feeling that this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about something much bigger, something that could destroy them both. Lyra turned back to him, her face filled with regret. I don't know. They'll come for us, they'll want to take the power back, control it. And if they can't, they'll destroy everything in their path to make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Marcus felt the weight of her words settle on him like a dark cloud. There was no escaping this. The power that had kept Lyra alive, the same power that had saved her, was also the reason they were now targets. And it was his fault. He had chosen to save her, and now he would have to live with the consequences. But there was one thing Marcus knew for sure. He wasn't going to let her face this alone. We'll find a way, he said firmly. I won't let them take you. We'll figure this out together. I promised you that, did I? Lyra's eyes softened as she looked at him, her hand reaching out to touch his arm. For a brief moment, the world outside seemed to disappear. All that mattered was the two of them, bound by a choice that neither of them could undo. The power inside them was dangerous, yes, but it was also theirs. It was a part of them now, for better or worse. Marcus didn't know how they were going to survive this, but he knew one thing: he wasn't going to let anyone tear them apart. Not now, not ever. That night, as Marcus lay in his bed, he couldn't sleep. The energy inside him was a constant presence, pulsing with power. It was growing stronger, and with it, his fear. What would happen to him? What would happen to Lyra? They were both changed now, marked by something far beyond their control. He could hear footsteps outside the door and sat up, his heart racing. He wasn't sure what he expected. Perhaps it was the weight of the choices he had made catching up with him. But it was too late for that. They were already too deep into this. He stood up, his legs unsteady as the energy inside him seemed to shift with each step. He had to face whatever came next. He had to protect Lyra. As he opened the door, he saw Dr. Reese standing there, his face grave. Marcus, the doctor said, his voice tight with concern. We've got a problem, they're coming, we need to move now. Marcus felt his heart sink. The moment they had been dreading had arrived. They were no longer safe. The power that had saved them was now the very thing that would make them targets. And there was no way out. Lyra's words echoed in his mind. The war had already begun. And this time it wasn't just her people fighting for control. It was a war for survival, for their lives. The night was darker than Marcus had ever remembered. The power inside him was pulsing stronger now, like a living thing. It was no longer a mere energy. It felt like it was becoming a part of him, shaping his thoughts and actions in ways he couldn't control. The strange, warm sensation that had started as a distant hum now filled every inch of him, and with it came a growing sense of urgency. Lyra was sitting at the table in their small, safe house, staring out the window at the distant lights of the city. Her once pale skin was now glowing faintly, a constant reminder of the power that lay within her. The energy, although still dangerous, had found a balance between them, but Marcus could feel it. The threat was still there, lingering just beyond their grasp. "We don't have much time," Marcus said, his voice steady but filled with concern. "The longer we stay here, the closer they get." Lyra didn't turn to look at him. She simply nodded, her eyes haunted by the same fear that had been with them since the moment the power had taken root in their bodies. "They're coming," she whispered. "I can feel it." Marcus walked over to her, kneeling down so that he was eye level with her. "I won't let them take you. We'll fight, Lyra. We'll fight this." She turned then, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "It's not just about them taking me, Marcus. It's about the power. If they have it, they will control everything. If I lose control, if the power is released in a way it shouldn't be." The weight of her words hung in the air like a thick fog. Marcus didn't want to think about what she was saying. He had already made the decision to save her, but he hadn't known what it would mean. He hadn't known that the very thing that had kept her alive was the thing that could destroy them both. "We can't let that happen," Marcus said, his voice firm, even though his hands were shaking slightly. He could feel the power inside him, pushing and pulling, wanting to break free. He wasn't sure how much longer he could hold it back. "You don't understand, Marcus," Lyra said, her voice trembling. "This power is older than any of us. It was created for one purpose, to shape the fate of galaxies, and now it's inside us both, if I lose control." "You won't lose control," Marcus interrupted, his heart racing. "I won't let you." But deep down, he wasn't sure he could keep his promise. He could feel it too, the power that connected them, the power that threatened to overwhelm them. They were both carrying something dangerous, and there was no way to predict what it might do next. A sharp knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Marcus stood quickly, his instincts on alert. He had known this moment would come. They had been running, hiding, but they couldn't escape forever. "I'll get it," Marcus said, his voice low. Lyra stood as well, moving toward him. "Be careful," she whispered. "They'll stop at nothing to take us." Marcus nodded, his hand hovering near the door handle. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, and then opened the door. Standing outside were 3 figures. All of them were armed, and their uniforms marked them as soldiers from Lyra's home world. The look in their eyes was not one of recognition, but of cold determination. "Lyra," one of them said, his voice steady but filled with command. "You need to come with us, now." Lyra took a step forward, but Marcus moved to block her. "No," he said firmly, "we're not going anywhere with you." The soldiers looked at him, their expressions unreadable. One of them, a tall man with sharp features, stepped forward. "You don't understand. The princess is needed. The power inside her, inside both of you, is too dangerous to remain uncontrolled." "I know what this power is," Marcus said, his voice hardening, "and I know what you're planning. You're not taking her anywhere." The soldier's face twitched with irritation. "You don't have a choice in this. Neither of you do." Marcus's hand clenched into a fist. His body was still weak, the energy inside him threatening to rise, but he wasn't afraid anymore. He had made his choice. He would protect Lyra no matter the cost. "Then we'll make our own choice," Marcus said, his voice steady and filled with resolve. "We're leaving, and you're not stopping us." The soldier raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Lyra moved, faster than Marcus could comprehend. The energy inside her flared to life, and the soldiers were thrown back by an unseen force. Marcus stumbled, barely able to keep his balance as the sheer force of the power in the room increased. "Lyra, stop!" Marcus shouted, trying to reach her, but she was already consumed by the energy. Her eyes glowed with a bright violet light, and the air around them crackled with electricity. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the power. "I didn't want this to happen, but I can't let them take me. I can't let them take you." Marcus felt the power surging inside her, and for a brief moment he understood what she meant. The power inside them was too much to control, too dangerous to be left in the hands of others. But as much as he wanted to stop her, he knew he couldn't. She had already made her decision. Before he could move, the door slammed open. More soldiers rushed in, weapons raised, but they stopped as soon as they saw what was happening. They had heard the stories, the legends of the power that could reshape the galaxy, but none of them had ever seen it unleashed like this. "I won't let them use you, Lyra," Marcus said, his voice hoarse. "Not like this." Lyra looked at him, her face filled with sorrow. "You don't have a choice," she said softly, her voice filled with sadness. "We never did." The energy inside her flared one final time, and Marcus felt his body collapse under its weight. The power that had connected them was now unraveling, threatening to tear them apart. But it wasn't the end. It couldn't be. As the light around them grew brighter, Marcus felt the pull of the energy fading, replaced by something stronger. It wasn't the power that had controlled them. It was the bond they had formed, the choice they had made together. The choice to fight for each other, no matter what. When the light finally faded, the soldiers were gone. The room was silent, the power gone from the air, leaving only the two of them standing in the aftermath. Marcus looked at Lyra, his body drained but still alive. They had survived, together, and though they knew their journey was far from over, they had faced the cost. And in that moment they understood that sometimes survival meant losing a part of yourself to save something greater.